Captain Michael Rodriguez gripped the edge of the reinforced concrete console, his knuckles white beneath the dust and grime. The underground command center beneath Cheyenne Mountain had never felt more like a tomb. Massive screens flickered with dying feeds from around the globe, each image a testament to humanity's sudden, brutal vulnerability. 12 hours earlier, the world had been normal. Traffic moved through city streets, people worried about mundane things like work presentations and weekend plans. Now those same streets were graveyards of molten metal and shattered dreams. The first Zorn ships had appeared without warning. No diplomatic communiques, no demands, no grand speeches, just silent, impossibly large vessels that blocked out the sun like living nightmares. Their technology was so advanced, it seemed almost magical. Energy weapons that could vaporize entire city blocks with a mere pulse, adaptive force fields that absorbed and redirected any counterattack. Rodriguez watched as Lieutenant Karen Williams, their communications specialist, desperately tried to maintain contact with any surviving military units. Her hands moved with a controlled panic, fingers dancing across encrypted channels that were rapidly going silent. "Sir," she called out, her voice cracking, "we've lost contact with no aid. Pacific Command is down. European Defense Network, completely offline." The command center was a microcosm of humanity's last stand. A dozen survivors from various military and scientific backgrounds, each representing humanity's final hope. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, no relation to Michael, a quantum physicist who had been consulting on advanced defense technologies, was hunched over a makeshift analysis station. Her eyes reflected the cascading data streams, searching for any weakness in the alien attack pattern. "They're not even trying to communicate," Dr. Rodriguez muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "This isn't a conquest. This is extermination." The Zorn ships moved with a cold, calculated precision that suggested decades, perhaps centuries, of warfare experience. Their weapons systems didn't just destroy. They systematically dismantled human infrastructure with surgical accuracy. Communication networks, power grids, military installations, all were neutralized within hours. On one of the surviving screens, Michael watched a live stream from Tokyo. A massive Zorn vessel hovered above the city, its surface a shifting pattern of dark metallic scales that seemed to absorb light itself. Thin, precise energy beams lanced down, turning skyscrapers into instantaneous dust. Millions of lives winked out in microseconds. "Why?" Lieutenant Williams whispered, a single tear cutting a clean path through the dust on her cheek. "Why us?" Michael knew there would be no answer. The Zorn hadn't come to negotiate, to colonize, or even to understand. They had come to eliminate. A young technical surgeon named David Martinez approached the main console, his hands trembling slightly. "Captain, I'm picking up something weird in the energy signatures of their weapon systems." Dr. Rodriguez looked up, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding the horror around them. "Explain." Martinez pulled up a complex holographic display. "The energy patterns, they're almost too perfect, like a mathematical equation brought to life. But there's a rhythm to it, a predictability." Michael understood what was being suggested. In the face of complete annihilation, the human mind did what it always did. It looked for patterns, for understanding, for hope. Outside the reinforced bunker, the world was dying. Major cities had been reduced to smoking craters. Millions were dead. Governments had collapsed. Militaries had been obliterated in a matter of hours. But inside this command center, something else was happening. As the screen showed humanity's apparent final moments, the survivors weren't preparing to die. They were preparing to fight back. Dr. Rodriguez adjusted her glasses, a slight smile forming at the corner of her mouth. "They think they've won," she said quietly. "They have no idea what humans are capable of." Captain Rodriguez looked around the room. Exhausted, terrified, but unbroken. "No," he said, "they most certainly do not." The abandoned radio observatory nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains was never meant to be a sanctuary. Its massive satellite dishes, once used for searching distant galaxies, now served as a shield against Zorn detection systems. Emma Hartley moved between makeshift workstations, her mind racing faster than her exhausted body could keep up. Jack Reeves, a former Navy SEAL with a network of surviving contacts, spread a topographical map across a reinforced table. Pinned to the map were dozens of red threads connecting various safe points, underground bunkers, hidden communication relays, and potential resistance cells. "We're not just survivors," Jack said, his weathered fingers tracing a complex route through the mountainous terrain. "We're the last firewall between humanity and total extinction." 17-year-old Tyler Rodriguez, no relation to the captain from Cheyenne Mountain, hunched over a collection of salvaged electronics, a prodigy who had been working on quantum computing projects before the invasion. He now cannibalized high-end smartphones, military-grade communication devices, and fragments of alien technology. "Look at this," Tyler called out, his voice crackling with excitement. He held up a modified circuit board that looked like a hybrid between human technology and something entirely alien. The Zorn communication frequencies use a quantum entanglement protocol. "It's brilliant, but it's also got a fundamental weakness." Emma moved closer, her electrical engineering background kicking into overdrive. The board was a masterpiece of improvised engineering. Tyler had essentially created a signal interceptor using parts from a gaming console, a satellite phone, and what appeared to be a fragment of Zorn technology. "Weakness how?" Jack asked, his tactical mind already calculating potential strategic advantages. Tyler's fingers danced across the modified equipment. "Their communication network is incredibly centralized, efficient, but rigid. Every transmission follows a specific quantum signature. If we can understand the pattern, we can not just intercept, but potentially manipulate their signals." Outside, the mountain landscape remained deceptively peaceful. The Zorn hadn't completely scoured the Earth. They were methodical, focusing on major population centers and strategic locations. The mountains, with their complex terrain and sparse population, remained a blind spot. Dr. Aisha Patel, a virologist who had been part of a CDC emergency response team, entered the makeshift command center. Her medical kit was a testament to human adaptation. Standard medical supplies mixed with improvised treatments, each item carefully selected and modified. "We've got more survivors coming," she reported. "A group from a research facility in West Virginia. They managed to escape with some critical biological research data." Jack's eyes narrowed. Biological research? During an alien invasion? Aisha's smile was grim. Not just any research. Adaptive immunology studies. The kind of work that might help us understand how to resist not just the Zorn's weapons, but potentially their entire approach to warfare. Emma understood the broader implications. The Zorn saw humanity as a monolithic, easily defeated species. They didn't understand the fundamental nature of human diversity, adaptability, and resilience. As night fell, the radio observatory became a hub of frantic activity. Tyler's signal interception equipment began picking up fragmented Zorn communications. Jack analyzed potential movement patterns. Aisha prepared medical resources. Emma coordinated their efforts, her mind constantly working to transform their disadvantage into an opportunity. "They think they've won," Emma said quietly, looking at the complex web of communications and survival strategies they were building. "But they have no idea what we're capable of." A sudden burst of static from Tyler's equipment caught everyone's attention. Amidst the noise, a clear pattern emerged, a Zorn communication fragment that seemed almost confused. Jack leaned in. "What are we hearing?" Tyler's fingers flew across the equipment. "It sounds like an error message, but not like any error message I've ever seen. It's almost like their perfect system is experiencing something it can't comprehend." Emma realized what was happening. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were already beginning to fight back, one improvised circuit, one unexpected response at a time. The resistance had begun. The abandoned server farm in rural Virginia hummed with a dangerous energy. Jack Thompson's fingers flew across multiple keyboards, each one a different color-coded system hijacked from various sources. Lines of code scrolled faster than human eyes could follow, a digital symphony of destruction and hope. 37 seconds, Tyler Rodriguez announced, monitoring the quantum signal analysis equipment. Their network is going to cycle its primary encryption in 37 seconds. Jack didn't respond. His entire being was focused on the intricate dance of code he was weaving. What the Zorn considered an impenetrable communication network was, to Jack, nothing more than an elaborate puzzle waiting to be solved. Emma Hartley watched from behind, her engineering background allowing her to follow the complex manipulation of alien technology. The recursive code sequences, she muttered, they're not just breaking the encryption. They're creating a cascading logical contradiction within their own system. The plan was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its complexity. The Zorn's communication network relied on a hierarchical quantum entanglement protocol that assumed perfect, logical transmission. Humans, with their capacity for lateral thinking and deliberate irrationality, saw this as an opportunity. Jack's modified system began injecting a series of recursive code sequences that didn't just breach the network. They fundamentally challenged its core operating principles. Each line of code was a logical trap, a mathematical paradox designed to make the Zorn's AI-driven communication systems question their own fundamental assumptions. Now, Tyler whispered. The first signs of success were subtle. On the monitoring screens, Zorn communication patterns began to fragment. What had been a seamless, perfectly coordinated network started to show signs of internal conflict. Halfway across the continent, a Zorn battle group received conflicting orders. Their precision-guided weapons, renowned for their absolute accuracy, suddenly began targeting their own units. In the skies above the Nevada desert, massive alien dropships collided with each other, their navigation systems suddenly unable to distinguish between friend and foe. It's working, Emma breathed. Jack allowed himself the briefest moment of satisfaction. Not just working. We're teaching them something they've never experienced before. The hack was more than a technical achievement. It was a fundamental challenge to the Zorn's understanding of intelligence, communication, and warfare. Their entire technological philosophy was based on perfect logic, hierarchical decision-making, and absolute certainty. Humans had just introduced chaos, uncertainty, and deliberate irrationality into their perfect system. A priority communication channel crackled to life, an encrypted frequency they had been monitoring. For the first time, they could hear the Zorn's internal communications. Systemic error detected, a mechanical voice translated, logical inconsistency, unable to reconcile transmission parameters. Tyler's eyes were wide. They don't just see this as a technical problem. They're experiencing something closer to confusion, maybe even fear. Jack's next move was crucial. He began embedding specific signal patterns, subtle messages designed to create maximum psychological disruption, mathematical impossibilities, logical contradictions, deliberate nonsensical sequences that would force the Zorn's communication AI to waste computational resources trying to understand. We're not just hacking their network, Jack explained. We're hacking their entire way of thinking. Outside, the night was punctuated by distant explosions. Zorn units were turning on each other, their perfect coordination destroyed by a few lines of human-designed code. Emma realized the profound implication of what they were doing. The Zorn had assumed humanity was a simple, linear species easily categorized and defeated. Instead, they were discovering a civilization capable of turning their own strengths into weaknesses. They had never encountered a species that fights like this, she said. Unpredictable, adaptive, willing to break every rule of conventional warfare. As dawn broke, the first confirmed reports came in. Multiple Zorn battle groups had been compromised. Their weapon systems were in complete disarray. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had struck back, and they were just getting started. The abandoned car manufacturing plant in Detroit had been transformed into humanity's most critical weapons research facility. 3 massive 3D printing arrays dominated the central floor, surrounded by workstations that looked like a cross between a high-tech laboratory and a salvage yard. Dr. Rachel Klein stood before a holographic display, her fingers tracing the molecular structure of what could only be described as impossible armor. Behind her, a team of engineers, material scientists, and former military technicians worked with a fevered intensity that spoke of both desperation and hope. The key, Rachel explained to Jack Reeves, who was examining a prototype armor panel, is adaptive nanostructural redesign. The Zorn weapons operate on specific energy frequencies. Our armor doesn't just block, it actively transforms. She activated a demonstration. The armor panel, seemingly solid metal, began to shift. Its molecular structure rearranged in real time, changing color, density, and electromagnetic properties. Where a Zorn energy weapon would have previously vaporized standard materials, this new design would absorb, redirect, and partially neutralize the incoming attack. Tyler Rodriguez was managing a complex network of global communication and data sharing. What had once been competitive tech companies and rival research institutions were now sharing every scrap of knowledge in real time. A breakthrough in a makeshift lab in Brazil could be integrated into a weapon design in Canada within minutes. "Look at this," Tyler called out, bringing up a global map. Dozens of hidden research sites were interconnected, each one a node in humanity's distributed innovation network. "We're turning their technological superiority into a disadvantage." The Zorn's centralized manufacturing and research model meant that any innovation had to pass through multiple layers of approval. Humanity's approach was the exact opposite: decentralized, chaotic, and impossibly fast. Dr. Marcus Williams, a former DARPA researcher who had been working on adaptive camouflage technologies, rolled out a new concept. "Traditional camouflage tries to blend in," he explained. "Our new system doesn't just hide. It actively confuses sensor systems." The prototype suit looked like liquid metal. When activated, it could mimic not just visual backgrounds, but thermal signatures, electromagnetic emissions, and even subtle environmental sounds. A soldier wearing this could walk through a Zorn scanning system and appear as nothing more than background noise. Emma Hartley was coordinating the technological exchange. "We're not just developing weapons," she told Jack. "We're creating an entirely new approach to warfare. The Zorn expect linear progression, predictable technological development. We're giving them something entirely different." In a corner of the facility, a group of engineers was breaking down captured Zorn technology. Every piece of alien equipment was a puzzle to be solved, reverse-engineered, and potentially turned against its creators. A massive energy weapon lay in pieces, surrounded by engineers from backgrounds as diverse as aerospace engineering, quantum physics, and automotive design. "Their technology is beautiful," one engineer muttered, "but it's also fundamentally limited. It assumes a perfect, predictable universe." Rachel's adaptive armor project was just one of dozens of concurrent research streams. Another team was developing microdrones that could swarm and overwhelm Zorn defensive systems. Another was working on communication systems that could operate on frequencies the aliens couldn't easily detect or jam. The manufacturing plant had become more than a research facility. It was a testament to human innovation, collaboration, and resilience. Jack watched the activity, a veteran who had seen countless military operations, but never anything like this. "We're not just fighting," he said to Rachel. "We're reimagining what's possible." A notification pinged on Tyler's communication network. Another research site had just uploaded a breakthrough in energy weapon countermeasures. Within seconds, the design was being analyzed, modified, and distributed to other resistance cells. The Zorn had come to Earth expecting a quick, decisive victory against a supposedly primitive species. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous: a global network of humans who refused to be defeated. Deep within a repurposed Cold War-era underground communication center, A team of linguists, psychologists, and former intelligence operatives worked on humanity's most unconventional weapon, pure psychological warfare. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a massive holographic display tracking Zorn communication patterns. Her team had discovered something profound. The alien civilization's communication wasn't just a technological network. It was a complex social ecosystem with deeply ingrained hierarchical structures that could be exploited. They're not a monolithic entity, Elena explained to Jack Reeves. They're a carefully structured civilization, where information and status are more valuable than physical resources. Sitting beside her, Dr. Marcus Chen, a specialist in alien communication theory, pointed to intricate linguistic patterns. See these communication markers? They're not just transmitting information. They're constantly reaffirming social hierarchy. Every message is a performance of status. The team had spent weeks decoding the nuanced communication of the Zorn. What appeared to be perfect, logical transmissions were actually laden with complex social subtexts. Challenges to authority, subtle power struggles, and intricate status negotiations were embedded in every communication. Tyler Rodriguez, managing the communication interception systems, had developed a series of algorithmic noise generators that would introduce precisely calculated disruptions into the Zorn's communication network. "We're not just intercepting," Tyler said, his fingers dancing across multiple interfaces. "We're creating targeted psychological pressure points." Their first major operation began with a series of carefully crafted disinformation campaigns. They didn't just spread false information. They crafted messages that would trigger specific psychological responses within the Zorn's rigid social structure. One transmission suggested that a lower-ranking Zorn commander had potentially discovered a critical weakness in their invasion strategy, something that would challenge the decisions of higher-ranking officials. Another message implied potential internal betrayal within a specific battle group. Jack watched the psychological operation unfold. "It's like we're playing multi-dimensional chess," he muttered. "Except the chessboard is their entire communication infrastructure." The results were immediate and devastating. Zorn battle groups began to show signs of internal hesitation. Communication became more guarded, more defensive. The smooth, efficient machine of their invasion started to develop internal friction. Emma Hartley, monitoring the broader strategic implications, noticed something extraordinary. "They're spending more computational resources on internal verification and validation than on actual combat operations," she reported. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. "Exactly. We're turning their greatest strength, their perfect hierarchical communication system, into their most significant weakness." The psychological warfare went beyond simple disinformation. The team developed communication sequences that would trigger deep-seated cultural anxieties within the Zorn civilization. Messages that subtly challenged their most fundamental beliefs about technological superiority and social order. In one particularly ingenious operation, they managed to introduce a series of mathematical paradoxes into high-level Zorn communication channels. These weren't just random noise. They were carefully constructed logical contradictions that would force their AI communication systems to waste extraordinary computational resources trying to resolve impossible scenarios. "We're exploiting something fundamental about their civilization," Dr. Chen explained. "They've never encountered a species that fights like this. Unpredictable, adaptive, willing to introduce pure chaos into their perfect systems." Tyler's monitoring systems picked up increasing signs of internal Zorn communication breakdown. Battle groups were requesting additional verification for standard operational orders. Communication hierarchies were becoming more rigid, more defensive. Jack recognized the psychological warfare tactics. "We're not just fighting them," he said. "We're making them fight themselves." As night fell over the underground communication center, the team continued their work. Each transmission was a carefully orchestrated psychological weapon. Each message a potential crack in the alien civilization's perfect facade. The Zorn had come to Earth expecting a straightforward conquest. Instead, they were discovering a species that could turn communication itself into a weapon. and humanity was just getting started. The abandoned United Nations headquarters in New York had become something entirely different. What was once a symbol of diplomatic division was now the nerve center of humanity's most critical collaboration. Captain Michael Rodriguez stood before a massive holographic map that tracked resistance cells, resource networks, and strategic operations across the globe. To his left, representatives from every continent, former rivals, now united, worked with an intensity that defied their previous limitations. Dr. Aisha Patel from the medical research team was coordinating a global health initiative. "We've developed a modular medical response system," she explained to the assembled leaders. "Each resistance cell can now produce medical supplies, treatments, and emergency equipment using locally sourced materials and our shared research database." A representative from a Brazilian tech collective demonstrated a breakthrough in communication technology. Beside her, a former Russian military strategist discussed resource allocation with an Australian agricultural specialist. National borders had become meaningless. Survival was the only priority. "Our greatest weapon," Michael told the assembled group, "isn't our technology. It's our ability to work together." The transformation had been remarkable. Countries that had been bitter enemies mere months ago now shared every resource, every piece of intelligence. A research breakthrough in a small laboratory in Kenya could be integrated into a weapons system in Canada within minutes. Manufacturing capabilities in abandoned factories across the globe were now part of a single, fluid network. Emma Hartley managed the global communication and resource coordination system. It was a masterpiece of distributed computing. No single point of failure, constant adaptation, and complete transparency among all resistance cells. "Look at this," she said, bringing up a real-time visualization of global resource sharing. Lines of communication and resource transfer crisscrossed the planet like a living, breathing network. "We're not just sharing information. We're becoming a single, adaptive organism." Tyler Rodriguez oversaw the communication networks. What had once been competing telecommunication systems were now a single, unified platform. Encrypted channels, satellite communications, even old radio networks. Everything was integrated into a single, resilient system. A new message came through from a resistance cell in Southeast Asia. They had developed a method of converting industrial waste into critical manufacturing materials. Within moments, the information was analyzed, verified, and distributed to other cells worldwide. Jack Reeves, coordinating military strategy, worked with a diverse team of former military personnel from dozens of countries. "We're not fighting like traditional armies," he explained during a strategy session. "We're fighting like a distributed network. Every resistance cell is both a potential target and a potential weapon." The Zorn had assumed humanity would fragment under pressure. Instead, they had created the most unified human civilization in history. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, leading the psychological warfare team, presented a breakthrough. "We're not just countering the Zorn," she explained. "We're learning from them. Every piece of their technology, every communication we intercept, becomes a tool for our survival." A representative from a small island nation stood up. "2 months ago, my country would have been considered insignificant on the global stage," she said. "Now we've developed a critical method for water purification that's being used by resistance cells worldwide." The meeting was interrupted by an alert from Tyler's communication system. Another resistance cell had successfully repurposed a Zorn communication device. The room erupted in a cheer that was part celebration, part defiance. Michael looked around the room. Scientists, military personnel, farmers, engineers, medical professionals, a true cross-section of humanity. They were no longer defined by their previous divisions. They were defined by their shared purpose. "We are not just fighting for survival," Michael announced to the assembled group. "We are fighting to show the universe what humanity truly is." Outside, the remnants of New York stood as a testament to the Zorn's initial assault. But inside this building, something far more powerful was being built. a new definition of human potential. The final preparations for Operation Prometheus unfolded with a precision that would have been impossible just months earlier. Resistance cells around the globe moved in perfect synchronization, each unit part of a larger, living network that defied the Zorn's understanding of military strategy. Captain Michael Rodriguez stood in the Central Command Center, a repurposed deep Earth facility that once served as a Cold War-era nuclear command bunker. Holographic displays tracked multiple simultaneous operations across every continent, a global chess match where humanity was finally playing to win. Dr. Rachel Klein's adaptive armor technology was about to receive its ultimate test. Thousands of specially equipped resistance fighters were prepared to strike at the heart of Zorn-controlled territories. Each suit was a marvel of human innovation, capable of shifting molecular structures to counter alien weapon systems, absorbing and redirecting energy, becoming virtually invisible to advanced sensor technologies. "We're not just attacking," Jack Reeves explained to the assembled strategic team. "We're completely rewriting the rules of engagement." The plan was brilliantly complex. Unlike traditional military operations, Operation Prometheus was a multi-layered assault that attacked the Zorn on every possible front: technological, psychological, and physical. Tyler Rodriguez managed the global communication network, a system so adaptive and distributed that it made the Zorn's centralized communication look like an ancient telegraph system. "They won't just be fighting us," Tyler said, his fingers dancing across multiple interfaces. "They'll be fighting a living, thinking network." The first wave began with a massive psychological warfare operation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had spent weeks crafting communication sequences designed to create maximum internal confusion within the Zorn hierarchy. Carefully constructed messages would be transmitted across their communication networks. Mathematical paradoxes, logical contradictions, and precisely targeted disinformation that would force their AI systems to waste computational resources trying to resolve impossible scenarios. Simultaneously, Emma Hartley's team would launch a coordinated cyber attack that would make their previous hacks look like child's play. Multiple entry points, recursive code sequences, and adaptive attack algorithms would penetrate the Zorn's supposedly impenetrable communication and control systems. On the ground, resistance cells prepared for a synchronized global assault. From the mountains of Afghanistan to the plains of Argentina, from the islands of Southeast Asia to the frozen tundra of Siberia, human fighters equipped with adaptive technologies would strike at critical Zorn infrastructure. "We've studied them," Michael told the assembled team. "We understand their weaknesses in ways they can't comprehend. They see warfare as a perfect, logical system. We see it as an art form." Dr. Aisha Patel's medical research team had prepared another critical component. They had developed a series of targeted biological countermeasures, not weapons, but adaptive defense mechanisms that could rapidly neutralize potential Zorn biological control technologies. As the operation began, the first reports came in. Zorn communication networks started to fragment. Their perfectly coordinated battle groups began to show signs of internal conflict. Weapon systems turned against each other. Entire command structures began to collapse from within. Jack watched the holographic displays with a veteran's experienced eye. "They never understood the most important thing about humanity," he said quietly. "We don't just adapt. We thrive on chaos." The adaptive armor worked beyond their wildest expectations. Where Zorn energy weapons would have previously vaporized human fighters, the suits now absorbed, redirected, and partially neutralized incoming attacks. Resistance fighters moved through previously impenetrable zones like ghosts, striking with precision and disappearing before the Zorn could fully comprehend the attack. Tyler's communication network tracked the operation in real time. "We're not just winning," he reported. "We're dismantling their entire operational concept." As the first day of Operation Prometheus drew to a close, something extraordinary became clear. This was more than a military operation. This was humanity redefining the very concept of warfare. The Zorn had come to Earth expecting a quick, decisive victory. Instead, they had awakened the sleeping giant. and humanity was just getting started. The last Zorn command ship hung in Earth's orbit like a wounded leviathan, its once perfect metallic surface now scarred and fragmented. Inside the ship's primary command center, the remaining Zorn leadership experienced something unprecedented in their civilization's history: total, absolute defeat. Captain Michael Rodriguez watched from the command center on Earth as the alien vessel's systems progressively shut down. What had begun as an invasion that seemed hopeless had transformed into humanity's most defining moment. "They're transmitting a surrender sequence," Tyler Rodriguez reported, his fingers dancing across the communication interfaces. "But it's strange. It's not like any surrender protocol we've seen before." Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, her linguistic analysis systems working overtime to decode the transmission. "They're not just surrendering," she explained. "They're attempting to understand how this happened." The holographic displays showed the complete breakdown of Zorn technological and military infrastructure. Their supposedly invincible systems had been systematically dismantled, not through brute force, but through a combination of psychological manipulation, technological innovation, and an adaptive strategy that defied their entire understanding of conflict. Jack Reeves stood beside Michael, a veteran who had seen countless conflicts but nothing like this. "We didn't just win a war," he said quietly. "We rewrote the entire concept of survival." Emma Hartley's global communication network began receiving transmissions from other alien civilizations, observers who had watched the conflict with a mixture of horror and fascination. Humanity had not just defended itself. It had demonstrated a level of adaptability and resilience that challenged fundamental assumptions about technological warfare. Dr. Rachel Klein's adaptive armor technology was already being studied by scientific teams around the world. What had been developed as a survival mechanism was now revealing insights into material science that would revolutionize multiple technological fields. "Look at this," she said, showing Michael a molecular simulation of the armor's adaptive capabilities. "We've essentially created a material that can think, that can respond to threats in real time. This isn't just a defensive technology. It's a new way of understanding the relationship between technology and environment." The Zorn surrender was unlike any in recorded history. They didn't just submit, they requested a comprehensive analysis of how they had been defeated. Their entire civilization was experiencing a fundamental philosophical crisis. Dr. Aisha Patel reviewed the biological and medical data collected during the conflict. "We've learned more about adaptive systems in 6 months than humanity had in the previous 6 decades, she reported. The medical breakthroughs alone would save millions of lives, transforming everything from cancer treatment to genetic research. Tyler's communication analysis revealed something extraordinary. The Zorn were not just surrendering. They were requesting a comprehensive cultural exchange. Their rigid, hierarchical civilization had been fundamentally challenged by humanity's adaptive, collaborative approach. "They want to understand us," Tyler said, a hint of wonder in his voice, "not as a conquered species, but as something they've never encountered before." Michael looked around the command center. Scientists, military personnel, engineers, people who months ago would have been competitors or even enemies, now worked together with a unity that seemed almost miraculous. The global resistance network that had been created to fight the Zorn didn't dissolve. Instead, it transformed. The collaborative systems developed during the war became the foundation for a new approach to global cooperation. "We didn't just survive," Michael announced to the assembled team. "We evolved." Outside, the first signs of planetary recovery were visible. Cities that had been reduced to rubble were already being rebuilt, not just restored, but reimagined. The adaptive technologies developed during the war were being applied to infrastructure, environmental restoration, medical research. The Zorn had come to Earth expecting to find a primitive, easily conquered species. Instead, they had discovered something far more dangerous, a civilization capable of turning its greatest weakness into its most profound strength. Humanity had not just survived. It had redefined what survival meant.